Alright, Blockheads, Taylor Martin from Pewaukee Lake Sailing School. We're next to this same 420. This time we're looking at a centerboard here and a pretty common damage and some pretty common repairs that we've got to do to centerboards. This repair is kind of on the leading edge, the leading corner here, and there's a couple of things wrong with this centerboard right now. One is the cracking of the gel coat from, I assume, a collision with the ground or with a dolly somewhere. And the other one, more serious, is that there's actually a hole all the way to the core at the front edge here. Now, many of these centerboards are going to have this gel coat cracking off of the fiberglass, and that's not as big of an issue. It's mostly one that we have to put more gel coat back on. But this repair, where we actually have a hole all the way to the core, is pretty serious because we can get some splitting along this seam here, for one. And then the other thing is, when we get water in here, there's actually both foam and wood in the core of these centerboards, and so we want to make sure that those don't get too wet. So this one's actually been drying for a while when the boat was right side up. We had the water draining out of it, so we're pretty sure that it's dry. And that's an important first step whenever we have a repair where we're seeing damage all the way to the core or all the way into fiberglass, is that before we do any repairs anywhere here, we've got to make sure that fiberglass or that core is dry. So we know that this is dry, and so what we'll do is we'll take a deeper look on how to repair this, but we're going to have to do some fill here as well as some actual fiberglass fiber on it, and then we'll do some more gel coat repair on top of that. And this one is a little bit more complicated, a little bit more dynamic of a surface, and so what we have to do first is open up this damaged gel coat a little bit on both sides and kind of get this curve opened up so that when we add our new glass and new gel coat, it has more surface to stick to than this small area of the repair. It makes for a little bit more durable of a repair. Using the same tools, same grinder, same personal protective equipment from earlier. Talking a little bit more about this shop space that we're in. And even though we all wear, when we're doing this sort of fiberglass work, our respirators and all our personal protective equipment, we also have, fortunately in this space, a lot of good ventilation. We have a good extraction fan here, which goes up to ventilation up top that vents this out and filters out the particulates. But that really ensures that the air in this space stays clean enough for us to breathe even when we're not wearing these respirators, so that it doesn't get too stagnant in here. This isn't a sort of repair that you would want to try without the right sort of ventilation in place. One of the big things that we want to talk about before tackling any projects like this is making sure that you or the people around you are prepared to do this work. So even though all of you guys are responsible for your boats and for taking care of your boats, you might not necessarily be the ones responsible for doing this sort of fiberglass work. So before any time you grind fiberglass or are applying gel coat, you want to make sure that either the person you're doing it with or the person doing the repair is a qualified fiberglass technician. And if you're really raring to go on doing projects like this yourself, make sure that you find somebody who's willing to guide you through that process, somebody qualified professional to guide you through this process. And if you're doing some sort of thing like this at home where you have somebody guiding you through this process and you don't have kind of industrial ventilation like we fortunately do in this workshop here, you really want to make sure that you have enough ventilation in your garage or in your driveway or wherever you're doing this, through box fans, through extractor fans that are used, that you can get at any of the big box stores. And you want to make sure that the people around you as well, so not just in your immediate area, so you know, if you're in a neighborhood, all of your neighbors, anybody around you, because this fiberglass stuff, if it's not properly ventilated, can get everywhere. And so you got a lot of concerns if you were trying to tackle this yourself with a professional, to making sure that your space is ventilated and contained enough that you're actually able to try these projects. And our first step is going to be to make sure that it's cleaned off. So we'll run some solvent over here, clean this off a little bit, and then what we have to do is we have to tape. And so we'll take our tape, and I'm going to go ahead and tape now. Just tape the area in case we have any runoff from that fiberglass, or from the resin rather, that we're using. And so we'll tape this off here so we don't have any overage. So before we get started with this, again, we're using this polyester-based resin and the same hardener that we used with the gel coat, this MEKP. And when you're using any stuff like this, make sure that the person you're working with is comfortable and competent using this sort of stuff, because it's pretty caustic chemicals. And so we have a measuring container here that has the number of ounces, and the ounces are important because we've got to keep the ratio of hardener to resin correct. And every resin is a little bit different depending on what brand you have, and it really depends on where you're doing it. If you're doing it in a really cool, humid area, you might need more hardener. If you're doing it in a really hot, dry area, you might need a little bit less. But typically for the resin that we're using, what we're looking for is about 20 droplets per ounce. So we'll drop it in here. I'll make sure that I don't have too much, and we'll keep that ratio to make sure that the consistency of what we're applying here stays the same and is going to cure properly. So we're going to go ahead and start that mix now. Again, making sure that we have our protective gear on. What we're looking for here is a consistency that's a little bit less thick than peanut butter. Enough that so when I put it on, it's not sagging down, so that it's staying in the place that I put it. But not so much that I can't spread it. It's really easy to add more of this filler stuff. It's hard to take it out once it's mixed. And so this is a good consistency. It's a little bit chunky still because of this filler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix it for another couple of minutes before I apply it to the centerboard. right, so we put this on here pretty thick, and in part we're trying to recreate this curve here, the shape of the dagger board, the centerboard. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to add a little bit of this blue tape, and this blue tape is fantastic because it doesn't stick when you put it sticky side down to this fiberglass or to this resin. And so what we'll do is we'll take this tape to help hold this shape in place here, and I'll do a couple of different tapes on both sides to make sure while it hardens, it stays in place, it is held in place. And then we've just got to wait for it to dry. One of our things that we have to be careful of when we're doing this is that we don't push down right where the fiberglass is or this filler is, because then we'll just squish it away from the place we're trying to repair. I've taped it along the bottom here where we're not trying to repair, just as a dam to hold this glass in place. So with this now held in place, what we'll do now is we'll wait for this to cure, and then we'll come back and pull this tape off. And we've filled that hole down to the core with some of the fiberglass that we have. And then we've also given the corner back to this board, given it some shape. And we also let this sag down over the old exposed glass a little bit so that this repair isn't just slapped on top in the shape of the corner, but that it actually goes down into the board a little bit so it stays in place. And we'll wait for this to cure and then come back and with that same grinder trim off some of this excess and take it down enough that we can add the gel coat on.